Long before the sun rose for the first time, before the stars took their places in the sky, there was only darkness. Not the kind of darkness that comes at night, soft and familiar, but a deep, endless emptiness where nothing moved and nothing lived. In that vast nothingness, there was only one being, the Great Spirit, vast and alone, floating in the silence. The Great Spirit was neither old nor young, neither man nor woman, but something beyond all that. It had existed for longer than time itself, and yet it felt something stirring within, a loneliness so heavy it ached. The Great Spirit had no voice to cry out, no hands to reach into the void, but it had a will, and that will grow stronger every moment. One day, the Great Spirit could bear the emptiness no longer. With all its might, it pushed against the darkness, straining to break free from the endless stillness. And then, pain. A sharp, terrible pain, as if the Great Spirit had torn itself apart. From that pain, from that wound, the first light spilled forth. It was not like the light we know now. It was wild and raw, flickering like a newborn thing, unsure of its own strength. But it was light, and where it touched the darkness, the emptiness trembled. The wound in the Great Spirit did not close. Instead, it grew, splitting wider, and from it poured not just light, but something else, something thick and heavy like molten fire. This fire did not burn. It moved like liquid, swirling and twisting, until it began to take shape. The first thing it formed was the earth, not the green earth we know, but a black, smoking land, cracked and trembling. The fire cooled, and where it touched the darkness it became stone, mountains, valleys. The Great Spirit watched, breathless, as its pain gave birth to something new. But the wound did not stop. It kept bleeding, and this time what came forth was not fire but water, a great flood, roaring out in waves so mighty they could have drowned the newborn earth. But instead of destruction, the water brought life. It filled the cracks in the land, pooled into vast seas, and where it met the fire, steam rose in great clouds. The Great Spirit, weakened but still fierce, reached into its own wound and tore it wider. From the deepest part of the wound came the first breath, a wind so powerful it could have shattered the world. But instead, it shaped it. The wind swept over the waters, stirring them into waves. It rushed over the land, carving rivers and valleys. And then, at last, it carried something new, sound. For the first time, the universe was not silent. The wind howled, the waters roared, the earth groaned as it settled. And the Great Spirit, though wounded, though bleeding light and fire and water and wind, felt something it had never known before. Joy. Aye. But creation was not finished. The womb still pulsed, still ached, and from it now came the stars. They burst forth like sparks from a fire, scattering across the darkness, tiny pinpricks of light in the endless black. The Great Spirit took the last of its strength and placed the stars in the sky, giving them names, giving them purpose. Then, with the final breath of its power, it placed the sun and the moon in the heavens, the sun to rule the day, the moon to watch over the night. Exhausted, the Great Spirit looked upon what it had made. The earth was alive now, shaped by fire and water and wind. The sky was no longer empty, but filled with stars and light. But still, the wound remained. It would never fully heal, for creation had come from pain, and pain would always be a part of the world. And so, the Great Spirit did one last thing. It took a piece of itself, a tiny fragment of its own light, and placed it into the world. From that light came the first living things, plants that stretched toward the sun, animals that roamed the land, fish that swam in the deep. And finally, from that same light came beings who could look upon the world and wonder, who could feel joy and sorrow, who could remember the story of the wound that began everything. And so even now, when the night is dark and the wind howls like the first breath of creation, when the stars shine like the tears of the Great Spirit, we remember that all things begin with pain, but from pain comes life, and from life comes hope. The wound never closed. But perhaps that is why the world is so beautiful.